trial with so many shocking moments, from delayed opening statements to admitting the defendant killed the victim, a contempt of court charge, and even a second suspect arrested during the day in the middle of the trial. The killing on Canebrake has grabbed the attention of so many, and joining us again this week to break it all down is criminal defense attorney Lori Murray, who you might recognize as Lawyer Lori on TikTok. Now, Lori, we've actually talked about this case before here on Midday, but so much has happened since. So for starters, can you just quickly give us a little refresher of the case for those who might not be aware?
Yeah, this case is about the murder of Christina Parcell. She was stabbed 35 times in her home. The murder and the person arrested for the murder was Zachary Hughes, who had no knowledge, no relationship with the victim. And the trial, this is the trial that we're talking about, the trial that went on based on his murdering of Christina Parcell.
Yeah, the last time we talked about this on Legal Lowdown, Zachary Hughes had taken the stand kind of shortly before we went on air. So since then, what kind of has been your reaction to the rest of his testimony?
You know, it's funny you asked that. I was watching this or listening to this trial on the way home from court in York County. And when he said that they're hiding things from you, that was one of the last things that he said on the stand. And obviously the courtroom kind of went nuts. But when he said that, my jaw dropped. I mean, I literally was like, I could not believe that he actually disobeyed the court's order so much and then just flat out threw the state under the bus like that. So it was exciting testimony. It was kind of unheard of testimony, but very entertaining.
Yeah, when you talk about unheard of testimony, I mean, they said flat out, yeah, he killed her. So while he was on the stand, he was talking about the process, the decision making, everything that went into the murder of Christina Parcell. And of course, the key part of this was the defense's argument of, yes, he did this, but it wasn't malice. Can you explain that again to us?
Sure. Malice is defined as basically the intent portion of murder, but it is the killing of another person without good reason or excuse. So Zachary Hughes's defense was, I had a good reason and an excuse, therefore malice does not come into play. This is not murder.
When we talk about his defense, one thing that was kind of tricky was he wasn't really able to go into his motive, as you mentioned. Well, during his testimony, he did continue to try and bring up the sexual abuse allegation as his motive, but the judge wouldn't allow it and eventually did hold him in contempt of court. So what were your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, that contempt of court was for when he threw the state under the bus and said that she had sexually abused her child. And honestly, this, as from a legal standpoint, this was his entire motive. The judge on every turn tied their hands to put out their defense. I didn't mean motive, defense. This was his entire defense. So having your hands tied when you're trying to present a defense is extremely difficult. And I think that he's got some kind of leg to stand on this for an appeal, but the judge said that this would confuse the jury. Now, behind the scenes, I think the judge was saying that he had no knowledge of the sexual misconduct and the photos and all of that because they didn't discover it until after she was killed. So how can he come in and say that's his reason if it was not common knowledge at the time? So it's going to be an interesting issue on appeal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, during his testimony, Hughes mentioned that John Mello, who's Christina Parcell's ex and the father of her child, had offered him money to kill Parcell numerous times. Within hours of that, John Mello was arrested. So what charges is he facing, and what was your reaction to that arrest?
Yeah, he's facing accessory before the fact and solicitation for murder. And, prior to this trial, we all knew, or at least I did, that this happened. There was this relationship there and that there was some kind of, common ground conspiracy for this murder. We knew that John Mello knew about it, had to, because they had over 500 text messages, or 5,000 text messages between the two of them. So we were kind of just waiting on it and waiting to see if he would actually throw John Mello under the bus. And he did. He threw him so far under the bus, it rolled over him twice. He gave the state everything that they needed to bring charges. And believe me, they were waiting right there on the side for him to say exactly what he said so that they could arrest Mello.
Yeah, and ultimately the jury found Hughes guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison. Now, as you mentioned, his team has promised to file an appeal. So quickly, do you think he'll be given that new trial?
I think that he has a very solid chance of getting that new trial just because the hands of the defense were tied completely. And there are some areas in the testimony of other witnesses, like the guardian, that kind of opened the door to this character testimony. And also, they asked for the motive part, the I'm sorry, the malice definition in the charges to the jury to be changed and to leave out that part about without reason or excuse. So it just says the intent to kill another person. That is absolutely his defense, and that is the legal definition of malice. So I'll be real interested to see what a court of appeals does that. I don't think you should limit the definition of a legal term just because they did not like the testimony of Zachary Hughes.
Yeah, there's still a whole lot to follow with this case. Of course, thank you for joining us again this week, Lori. And a reminder that you can catch the Legal Lowdown most Wednesdays right here on the Midday News. And you can also follow Lori on her TikTok at Lawyer Lori.
And now,